here's what we're doing today. The idea behind this is there's a lot of folks that are have been doing the work from home thing for the last year, the last 20 years if you're Danto, but really last year, WFH really kind of hit it. And so what we're looking at is how folks are taking that setup, creating more than just a typical work from home, right? With just a webcam and using that microphone and really kind of enhancing it to do content creation, all right? First and foremost, I'm gonna have Danto talk about the IMCCA, and then we'll go into the setup.
Okay, very briefly, the IMCCA has been around. I confirmed it yesterday because I didn't remember. 22 years. The Interactive Multimedia and Collaborative Communications Alliance, nonprofit organization. The executive director's right back there in booth. It changed 3 times. 3844. No, that's not the right number.
That's not the right one.
No, I guess I didn't get this slide.
There's
changed.
a big flag
over it.
over
Big black
it.
sign that says IMCCA. IMCCA.org. It's free for end users, very inexpensive for vendor members. We do a lot of educational panels like these. It's a great organization to be with. Please come join us whenever you can.
All right. So.
And while you're doing this, I'll give you the lead into this slide too,
Yeah.
because I did all of this yesterday. This is the aspects of a typical work from home office.
Okay.
So you can go into these if you want, or you can ignore them, but the whole point of this session today is when you need to go past this stuff.
Well, that was the thing is I do want to. There is something. So David did make the graphic, and I was reading it this morning, and I'm like, well, that's not true, and that's not true. So I do want to pick on the graphic real quickly. When we all went home, when y'all went home, because some folks still didn't go home. A lot of folks took their laptops, right, and they sat at their kitchen table. They didn't have a desk. They didn't have a light, right? They had whatever camera was built into the laptop. And then CEDIA members in the residential part of the AV industry slowly but surely started getting calls like, holy crap, I'm still doing this 6 months later, a year later. How do we make this better, right? So sitting at a desk obviously is best practices, right? You're sitting up and this, that, and the other. The light, certainly, you don't have to have 3-point lighting. I'm going to talk about that with my own setup in a second. Certainly have a comfortable chair, but then we get into cameras and microphones, okay? I'm going to start with Steph on this. Steph does a really good podcast, a couple of them, but one I want to talk about is the one she's going through her CTS on the VIXA side. She's studying for her CTS certification. That's kind of CEDIA has a version of the CTS, but talk for a second about some of your setup in your guys' office.
Yeah, sure. So I think the most important thing for us was creating a setup that I can use in the office, because I do sometimes go to the office when I just need really quick internet if I want to be hardwired in, but that if necessary I could take it home in a pinch. So what we've actually done is I use like a mirrorless Sony like A6100, and I got a capture card to put through that, so that way the camera is pulling like really nice video. You get that really nice depth of field. It looks really nice, really professional, but it's also small. So if I need to pack it up and take it home, I just take it off the tripod and just pack it up in my backpack and I can hoof it home. But for us also, like, audio is really important, but the great thing about doing a podcast or a video cast like that is you really don't need to spend $1 million to get great audio. Like, I use a Blue Yeti mic like most of the time, because you can set whether you want it to be directional, or you can set whether you want it to be dynamic or like bi-directional if I have someone on it who's right across from me. So just spending like $100 on like a camera or on a microphone that you can just sit at the table with you has been just like a really great, easy investment. And headphones, I have like Shure ones that I put, or I'll just use AirPods sometimes if I just need to use those in a pinch. So I think the really important thing that we've realized is, like, you don't need to spend $1 million. You can get really great quality stuff for just a couple $100. So obviously the most important and most expensive part of my setup was my camera. But yeah, even that was the most expensive part. Everything else is like pretty cheap and inexpensive off Amazon. So.
Really quickly, everybody understands what she says when she's talking about bidirectional and the pickup patterns?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, I'm just making sure because...
I'm putting in my little CTS study
You
in
were,
there.
absolutely.
Just dropping some keywords.
So what she's talking about is the pickup pattern. That is the area in front of the microphone that your voice can be picked up, not
Right.
that it can't be heard. It's just the optimal space. The bidirectional. Talk about that for a second, because that, talk about that.
Sure. So if you and I are talking and say we're on a podcast together and we're sitting next to each other, a bidirectional is going to pick up you and it's going to pick up me, and it's going to go kind of in a straight line. But when I am doing it alone and I'm not interviewing anyone, I want it to be like unidirectional, or just sometimes called directional, where it will just do like a laser focused and just pick up right here. But with the time where you use like dynamic is like in journalism or something, where you're going and you just kind of need to put a microphone in front of someone and you don't have like a lot of time, so a directional mic picks up from all around it. So that's my quick little CTS audio for you guys. I hope I pass.
I hope you do too. She hasn't taken it yet. Aurangzeb, let's get your take on camera, especially high quality camera and the importance of that in creating content.
So I'd agree very much with the note that you don't need to spend $1 million, and that high quality cameras and sound matter. In our own case, we provide a range of cameras. As you know, we have a unique technology with a multi-camera array that allows you to create a full 180 field of view with human scale fidelity, so people look good no matter where they are in that field of view. And then we make a set of speakerphone products with omnidirectional microphones that have good pickup and automatic gain control, so no matter where you are, your voice sounds good, and headphones and headsets that give you a personal space if you're in a crowded space. And all of those can be used in a variety of ways. Hopefully we'll talk more about that here to create use cases.
All right, Mr. Danto, you've been working from home longer than any of us. First, let's talk about your typical, like before you did any content, 20 years ago, what was your work from home setup?
It's probably a Tandberg 1700, and some. I like daylights in my base. Daylight color temperature lighting, 5200 degrees Kelvin lighting in my basement.
So you were using that even?
Before, because it's easier on my eyes
Okay.
than the cooler light than the warmer light. That's a personal preference. And also, if you have daylight coming in through a window, it's always good to not be competing with it, so you get a good white balance off the camera. I learned very quickly on that one of the most important things to look good on camera is the lighting. It's in many cases it's more important than the camera. Not 1,000% more important, but it's more important in that if you've got a decent quality camera, any of the professional cameras made by any of the companies that are around, but you put some really nice lighting on, and again, follow 3-point lighting doesn't have to be with expensive made for broadcast or made for podcast lighting, but just at 45-degree angles, a key light it's called, and then a fill light, and then something behind you to separate the back of your head from whatever is behind you, give you a little bit of a sheen or halo or effect or whatever it is. What people will look at you and say, wow, what did you do with your camera? And it's like, I just turn my lights off and show them the difference, and it's amazing how well it gets picked up. And the other thing that's also very important, whether you're doing podcasts or you're a guest, and Steph, I've been a guest on the one you guys do at rAVe for a bunch of times, the camera should really be at your eye level. If you're standing, you should have it up so that the camera's at your eye level standing. If you're sitting, it should be there. Because the one thing that's very disconcerting, Tim, I'm looking at you right now, if I'm looking like this, while you're talking to me, I'm not making a connection with the audience.
Right.
You have to be able to stare into camera. Sometimes you do it to your own detriment, because I'd love to see what the expressions of the other people's faces are, but I've trained myself to stare into the camera to really make eye contact with the viewer. None of these things are expensive. Yeah, you can buy a $100 awesome video light, any of the 3, 4, 5 brands I have in my house. The $29 lamp at Amazon is just as good, color temperature adjustable, dimmable. Same thing, learning to look into the camera, learning to have good audio, whether that's a headset or whether that's a microphone. In your case, you've used a broadcast microphone for many years. These are things that again, it works out, and there are lots of opportunities, as you can see, for just producing this content. I do programming for you, and I'm proud to do it for AVNation. I also do webcasts for the IMCCA. I also just put stuff up on YouTube. There's no cost to doing it. It's very easy to produce the content.
Well, and I wanted to bring up this slide because there's a couple different examples here. We can see David's setup, right, on the lower right-hand corner. Our buddy Chris Netto, who I'll pick on all day, every day, is just above him. Chris's setup is a lot like yours, Steph. In fact, he has a DSLR camera.
Yeah.
Right. Different microphone setups, but the lighting is what I want to highlight here.
Right.
For some reason, there are 2 pictures of me, which I'll talk to David about that later. But I actually have a...
I had to include the 500. I thought that was important.
That's how old I am. I use 4-point lighting, and there's a reason for that. It's a trick for those of you who use green screens, okay? So the 3-point lighting that David talked about with the 45-degree angle, a fill, and the backlighting, that all is on me, okay? So you've got 3-point lighting on me. The 4th part of the 4-point lighting when you use green screen is actually on the screen itself. And the reason for that is that it separates you from the green screen. And the quality that I get when I'm doing it versus when I'm not is remarkable. Because what you're doing is you're giving more light to that screen. Yes, there's a little bit of spillover because it's hitting me and this, that, and the other, but when you actively light the green part of that screen, then you're going to get a better separation, and the actual key part, which is the technical term of what Zoom does when they take out the green and they put in a background. The keying part of that is the quality is much better. You're going to get much less pixelation. You're going to get better. You're going to get a better background image. If you're going to want to get really, really fancy, you can actually take and your backlight, do it with an amber light, and the reason for that is the amber light is the opposite of the green screen, because then you're taking it's whatever opposite it is. If you take the amber light and shine it on the back of your head, then that actually creates another kind of element.
I'm sorry, the cringe was I had to learn my additive and subtractive primaries, red, blue, green, and magenta, cyan, and yellow. That's as important to me as the CTS silly stuff that you're learning.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Sorry about that.
The next thing I want to do, and we'll just kind of go back this way here. David, you talked about the different podcasts and stuff that you use. When you look at whether it's video or audio, right, and you can do either other content, and I'll comment at the end there. But when you look at these soft codecs that have come through, and I love the fact that your first setup was a Tandberg, because they don't exist anymore. What are you looking at? Because we've got Neil down here on the lower right-hand corner, right? When you're looking at content and the video that folks can do at their house, what are the other uses that we can do?
Well, there are 2 points there. The first one is, for most content creators, new content creators, you want this to be easy. So YouTube has been around for a very long time. It's an inexpensive, easy platform to put your content out. I put the picture up there of the Zoom events one. Zoom is creating a new a front end for content creators where you can literally say, hey, I'm a really good karate instructor. I'll create karate and I'll sell access to it, and they're giving you the whole platform to do it. The sales, the front end, and everything else. So, and Zoom was going to be here if it weren't for the hurricane that just passed through the country. So I'll give them a bit of a plug. But they've got a great piece as well. So part of it is where you put it, and finding a good place for it. Part of it is just understanding not to get yourself locked in a box. And I think Aurangzeb, you'll probably have more points than I do. The things that you can do to create content. Not everybody's going to be a VJ. Not everybody's going to have a talk show, but things that might be of interest to me might be teaching a class. It might be helping my students. It might be showing people how to fix. I don't ever look at a manual anymore. When my computer was breaking at home, I just go and do a search online for somebody who has a fix-it video for how to fix the thing, and they say subscribe. So I subscribe it. The one you have over there from Neil, is the Poly Weekly News. He's on every Monday. We're going to be on every Monday, going forward. This coming Monday, I joined him, and he just talks about what's of interest to people who buy the Poly gear. So if you have something that you're passionate about, or you have a company that you're trying to really promote, the sky's, I'm sure you've seen other options as well of people doing these things that are not necessarily just video conferencing.
No, very much. I mean, I think a popular use case is just a fireside chat. In a sense, this is a fireside chat. If you had a device of ours in front of you here, even our speakerphone, be pretty good pickup for everybody, and you'd be able to. I really wanted to also echo the point David made about, I'm sure you know this all, but about looking into the camera and making eye contact, because that sense of when you look at the camera, you make virtual eye contact with your audience. It's a really powerful thing. I mean, we're wired as humans want that and to kind of need that, right? I think education is an area that a lot of our products are getting used, and that's one where we particularly provide a technology for whiteboard capability. So you can have a second video stream. So if an educator is teaching from home because their life is in such a state of flux, some days they're in class, other ways they're not, or if they're in class, there's a satellite class somewhere else. So the need for audio video technology becomes really paramount, along with Zoom and Teams and Google and these other services. So allowing people to take a very small footprint, be able to make good contact with the students, see everybody like as a Brady Bunch on a screen, and then bring in a whiteboard, makes that whole experience much more compelling. I think the worst thing for an educator is to get stuck in a chair in front of a camera and not able to move, because you lose your students very quickly that way. So that's one. And I think the other, as you said, people are using a product. We use ours also to create content, right? Because it's good 4K content. And maybe we'll come back around, but this new generation of cameras, from us, from other people, is incorporating AI technology that allows you to have more creative control and freedom than was even possible with conventional cameras, even DSLR cameras. And that's going to create a new opportunity for people to create good content.
All right, but Steph, David mentioned the fact of teaching classes. That is kind of what your podcast is about.
Right.
But what else have you seen people using video and audio for?
I think it's just becoming more important to not be static. So to not just be a person who's sitting in front of your camera and talking at the camera. It's becoming more important for your cameras and your mic and really all of your equipment to be able to support up and moving around. So if you're a teacher, being able to support you doing something on the whiteboard. If you're in a meeting, being able to support you going up and writing something. So it's becoming less about just being a talking head. And just being essentially just a stagnant broadcast setup. It's becoming more and more important to be able to focus on letting you do multiple things and just doing them on camera. I think it's AVNation who recently came out with a video conferencing camera that knows to follow you as you get up and walk, and knows to take audio from you if you are in front of it, so that you can be in a meeting room or be in an office with multiple people and be taking a video conferencing call, and it knows to pull only your audio and to make everyone else's, it'll cancel out everything else. So I think it's becoming more and more important to develop things that can do that. So yeah.
And you might want to point out that that's the direction that most conferencing and collaboration gear is moving in, adding that AI, being able to track, being able to follow you around the room. Some of them are using mechanical PTZs, some of them are you doing it, optically and visually, but those production rules are starting to be built into the technology now. So as you look at the list of things that might be important to you to choose from, if that's an important feature for you, you definitely want to compare what's out there. YouTube is an awesome source to see what this stuff really looks like. If you can't get into showrooms now because of COVID or whatever, just look before you buy a camera, look at how it works, and you can see all those features.
Well, and look and see what the output is, right? What the final product looks like, and that's the other thing. This is just kind of a rundown here, but what I wanted to get through is talking about other use cases, and I want to finish that before we move on to this. One of the things, and that David said is YouTube a lot, because YouTube's a good source, right? YouTube is a good source of things. You can go and research, you can become an expert, this, that, and the other. But there are so many other video platforms and so many other podcast platforms. TikTok is one that we're looking at now. I know that it's becoming more, I want to say it is the most non-Facebook downloaded app currently. I know that sounds weird to say, but Facebook owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. So that's a significant thing. LinkedIn has video. Amazon has video. So if you either sell a product that's available on Amazon, or you can become a subject matter expert on Amazon to people looking for home theaters or home theater solutions. Twitter and Facebook and
Instagram, yeah.
Yep, all of them, with the exception of Clubhouse, I think, is the only social media platform, and that's just because it's audio only. So, all right, Steph, let's create a home studio.
Okay.
All right, what's pick 2 or 3 things. Let's start with the microphone and the headphones.
Sure.
What's beside? Yeah, you use a blue.
Yeah.
But if you had to do it over again, maybe you'd still use a blue. But what would you advise somebody?
I would just advise them to, first of all, like, what are they doing? Are they sitting at a desk all the time? Are they getting up and, like, moving around the room? Because then, like, a Yeti mic that's sitting on a table, that's not going to help you. You're going to need a lav or something.
No.
So first of all, just identify, like, what kind of content you want to put out, because that's going to, a lot of times, help you identify what you're going to need to create that content. So you can get a cheap lav on Amazon for, like, $20. So, like, sometimes, like, yeah, that's all you need, because you don't need, like, professional level audio sometimes if you're just a content creator who's getting started. But first of all, yeah, I would say, get you a good mic. So, like, because, people don't always need to see you. And when a video conference or something goes wrong, it's going to be okay if they can still hear you. But if they can see you and they can't hear you anymore, they're out of there. They're not going to watch. So I would say really develop, like, you want to be heard, like clear audio. So whatever it takes to get you that, I would say go ahead and buy it. Second of all, a pretty good camera. So if you're a content creator, chances are you're going to want to get an SLR and then a capture card so that you can get that really clear picture, be able to zoom in, zoom out, do all that different stuff. Especially if you are going to get up and like move around, do different things, you're probably going to need a tripod. And then you're going to need, great lighting. And y'all were talking about like 3-point, 4-point lighting, because lighting, you can have an amazing camera, but if you don't have good lighting, you're going to look like you're in a cave no matter what you're using. You can be using a $3,000 camera, $10,000 camera, and if you don't have like a good lighting or like no window for some natural light to come in, because that's like one of my secrets, having a good placed window that'll just get you like some natural light, helps you look alive even if you feel a little dead inside. But yeah, I would say like those are the three things, like good lighting, pretty good camera, really good audio. Those are the three things that you really just need, and just start making content and you're set.
I want to point something out here that she said, and listen to her, because if you don't have video, you can still have a conference.
Yep.
You can still make content. If you don't have audio, or you have crappy audio, your audience is going to be out, and the people on the phone are going to be out, or the video conference is going to be out.
Exactly.
So.
I mean, like, that's been proven. Like, things have gone wrong on live events I've been on because live events go wrong, and that is how they... Yeah. You'd never think they would. But any chance you have, like, a live virtual event, like, something's going to go wrong. And, like, I always hope to God that it's going to be the video part that goes wrong, because if people can still hear you, they'll stick around, because they're like, oh, yeah, like, she's still talking, things are happening. But if, like, audio goes out and they can't hear you, and I'm just like, they're gone. So.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah,
right.
anytime.
Aurangzeb, you build a home studio for us.
Well, so I think
Build a home studio for us. What are you picking?
A lot of the points that you heard were exactly right. You want to hear and be heard clearly, and I think on that, I would say invest in a good quality enough device that the tone and timbre of your voice comes through, that you don't sound like you're in a tin cup, because that is partly, when we did some research on what creates fatigue, and what creates fatigue is low quality video and low quality audio. So great audio, of course our products, there are many other products by other companies in the industry that allow you to wirelessly move around. So if I really like headphones with a boom arm, I can place it, it's perfect. The latest ones have great noise cancellation, so I did a bunch of calls sitting over there, and people presenting here, no problem. The other side didn't hear any of that noise; it just heard me very clearly. So I like to move around. So having obviously a device that has a field of view that allows you to move around, and many of them, as David now said, have AI built in that follows the speaker and can just keep up with you very nicely. I prefer the electronic ones versus the mechanical ones, because the mechanical ones have a certain amount of delay. So it doesn't feel quite as smooth as the latest electronic ones. The other thing we focus a lot on is the point you made about exposure. So we often have people using our devices sitting in front of a bright window, and the old style cameras, they'll basically expose for the window so the person looks silhouetted. Well, we know where the person is sitting, so we just optimize the exposure. We spot meter to the person's face and try and give them the best exposure possible. So it just takes another variable out, because when you're out and about, or even at home, if you've got a window behind, you just don't really have control over what's happening outside, right? And I think that little bit of movement, I talk with my hands, I like to write, so whiteboard is important to me. So those are a few things to think about. And there are so many platforms, YouTube, you mentioned all the new ones coming up, TikToks, they can all benefit from these kinds of outputs.
David?
Well, I'm not going to add much to what you guys have said because it's all very valuable. I will disagree with a couple of things that you said, Steph.
That's okay.
Just from the sense that if we were talking about 2-3 years ago, you would really want to get that DSLR camera because you're not going to get that kind of quality out of a home video camera. That's 100% true 2 or 3 years ago. Now you're starting to get 20 megapixel cameras built for home. And plugging in a 20 megapixel camera built from home into a home setup, when it's built for that, is a single USB connection. You don't need the capture card anymore. It does the AI tracking for you so you can walk up and stand up around the room. Not all of them are that good, but they're starting to hit the market now. We were talking about this in one of yesterday's session. Cameras and devices purpose-built for use in the home studio. And you're going to start to see more and more products like that that are going to be easier to use. Same thing when it comes to the microphone. Lord knows I've built 1,000 stage lavalier microphones out of a Radio Shack element over the years of my life. So getting a little lavalier that you get imported isn't that big a deal. But then sometimes the dog barks. The dog bites, the bee stings. Anyway, you're going to get some of those extraneous noises. Your spouse calls you, the phone rings. One of those inexpensive microphones is not going to block that out. So if you're in a studio environment, terrific. But if you're not in a studio environment, you either need, as you pointed out, a very directional microphone, a hypercardioid microphone, or a unidirectional microphone, or you can go with some of the conferencing devices that are coming onto the market right now that are going to block out some of that extraneous noise. It's going to know you're the speaker, as you pointed out, and not let any of the sound come in past the acoustic fence. So I might opt for a slightly more expensive setup with purpose-built devices, but to accomplish the same thing.
For sure. And I don't disagree with what you said. I think it all just really comes down to like, what's the content you're creating? Because how much money you're going to want to spend and how much money on what part of that equipment is going to depend on what you're creating.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're able to create a setup that you can use for conferencing, pretty much like Tim does, but you can also use it for moderating or broadcasting or creating content, you've got the best of all worlds.
And see, this is where I'll disagree with you. I don't use this picture here is not what I use for conferencing. I record with that. I have a completely separate video conferencing system in my office. That is our studio. Now, I will have people ask me what microphone that I use. I currently use a Shure SM7B. It is a broadcast level microphone. I've also used an EV20 before. Again, another good broadcast microphone. If you take a look at that form factor in the lower right hand, the stupid big thing sticking in my face, that is an SM7B. Shure, and this isn't a commercial for them, but Shure recently came out, I think about a year ago, they came out with a USB version of that called an MV7.
Yeah.
MV7.
I have one of those. I really like it.
Yeah.
I just got one. I got it a couple weeks ago, and the really, really great thing about it is it has a USB-C, like that connection that comes with it. So if you're in a pinch and you just need to hook it up really quick, you plug it into your MacBook, and bing, bang, boom, you're good to go.
But
like you don't need to plug a million things into a million things anymore.
Go back to that picture page again,
All
though.
right.
If you, so you see, if you look at me in the lower right-hand corner there, can you see the microphone that I'm using?
No.
No.
You can't. I'm using a very directional, open microphone that does a really good job of picking me up. Not the best job. When I know that I'm going to be, needing to really moderate a conversation for an hour, I'll probably put on a headset or use a specific microphone. But if I'm the guest on somebody's show, I don't like to be mic'd. I like to be able to be free to walk around and get up and point to things, and the mic follows me.
And that is, I am the exact opposite. I am so, and maybe that's because of my background, and I have gotten it drilled in my head that audio is the most important thing. Video is nice to have.
Yeah.
Audio is an imperative if you're trying to communicate an idea or a thought. So even if I am on a guest, right? I was on David and with David and Neil the other day. I was in our corporate office, not near my studio, but I still had a microphone. It was a direction. It was one of the USB microphones, right? Directional. Had it close to my mouth because that is what's in my head as an imperative.
It's also good when you can use a microphone that you get for free from the company you're working for.
Well, there is that.